Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a little bit of a publisher book haul and we're going to do my January and February wrap up. So it's a little bit of a diverse publisher book haul today. I've got something from Saga, Penguin, and then Berkeley. So let's start off with what I got sent from Saga Press. That is Pinquickle's Folly by R.A. Salvatore. Honestly, this is definitely more of a John book. John is more into R.A. Salvatore than I am. He's read a lot more of R.A. Salvatore's books, but Saga had this listed as one of their Saga Says crew member options. So I did ask for a finished copy of, I think it's his newest book. Is this newly released? ? I think that this is relatively newly published. It says that it came out in 2024. Don't quote me on that. I'm very not familiar with R.A. Salvatore's stuff. But I did ask if I could get a finished copy of this so that John could read it because this is his favorite author of all time. He's been reading R.A. Salvatore since he was little, and so Saga Press has picked up him as an author. So John's pretty excited to be able to read more of his books. I'm not super familiar with the storyline, but I believe that this is a fantasy pirate adventure or something along those lines. So yeah, it sounds pretty good. I will have John come in here and talk about it with you guys once he's finished reading it. The next two books are books I am super excited to talk to you about. The first one is The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. I had been asking for this from Penguin Teen for a minute because it sounded so interesting, and I was so excited when they sent me a finished copy of it. It is the Good Morning America Book Club pick for this month of March? I'm not entirely certain, but okay, so The Otherwhere Post. I devoured this book, and it is a YA romantasy type adventure that does get very, very dark at times. The magic system revolves around writing and ink, things like that. So let me take it back. This world is very similar to the one of Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab's A Darker Shade of Magic. So this is very similar to that in that there are different like layers of reality, but they are reflections of each other. There's like different versions of each world, but it's all like the same cities in them. So people used to freely be able to travel throughout these different realities, I guess you could say, or layers of the world, whatever, through these doors. And one day tragedy strikes and something called, I think it's called the Elder Vine, something along those lines, immediately puts people to sleep and kills them the moment that it touches you, starts to spread throughout these worlds. And in order to stop that spread, they burn down the doors, and people are no longer able to travel between them. The only ones that can are members of the Otherwhere Post, and these people have access, well, first they were apprentices and were trained in this writing magic. It's like a 1-year apprenticeship program, and they learn how to use this magic, and because they have access to this magic, they can open doors between the worlds that only they have access to, that allow them to courier messages between people, between the worlds, but nobody else can travel this way. So this brings you to the main character, who her father was actually accused of murdering many, many people. I won't get into the specifics, but she receives a missive from a courier saying that her father is innocent and they have proof, but there's no name on the note. So she has no idea who it's from or when it's from, etc. And she decides that she's going to infiltrate the Otherwhere Post's apprenticeship program in order to find out where this message came from. So she goes undercover, she steals somebody's identity, she sneaks into this program that her father was also a part of, and she tries to find out who this came from. And in doing so, she meets Tristan, who is the son of, I don't remember the leadership's exact title, but like the guy who is in charge of the Otherwhere Post. She runs into Tristan. He actually becomes her mentor, but he's got a dark, jaded past in which bad things have happened to him, but they kind of bond over this. They know that each other is keeping secrets. He's fully aware that she's not who she says she is. And the twists and the turns of this book, the romance in this book, the ending of this book, okay, this was a 5-star read for me, and not only because of the fact that I appreciate the fact that it's a standalone. It was not meant to be a series, but it could be a series if it wanted to be, and I actually really wish Emily Taylor would write a lot more in this world because it was so fascinating. But the fact that it's not ended on a cliffhanger and meant to be a multiple series with hooks at the end to drag you through, I appreciate that, right? That's very refreshing. The characters were frustrating but great. The romance was entertaining. The magic, the world building, I loved every single bit of it. I will rave about this. I can tell you right now it's going to be on my top reads of the entire year. If that doesn't convince you to read this book, it's already out. Go pick it up. It was so good. The next book that I want to talk to you guys about that got sent to me by Berkeley was a total surprise, and when I tell you I screamed when this came in the mail, it's not an exaggeration. I squealed like a baby. Jack was very concerned. So that is Dead Man's List by Karen Rose. If you've been on this channel for a minute, you have heard me talk about Karen Rose. She has an entire shelf. You can't see it, but it's the end of this shelf over here. She has an entire shelf dedicated. I have read everything that this woman has ever written. I have been reading her books since long before I was of age to be reading the type of romantic suspense that she writes. When I tell you that she is my all-time favorite romantic suspense author, this is not an exaggeration. I've been recommending her as a romantic suspense author to you for years. Fangirl moment over though. I knew that the next book in her San Diego Files series was coming out, so I wrote to Berkeley and I begged, literally begged, to be sent an advanced copy. I was just hoping, praying for like a digital arc at that point, because I've received her digital arcs in the past and I feel so privileged to be able to say that. I know that she's not an author that's on a ton of people's radar, but she's on mine. I didn't receive a response though, so I didn't really think anything of it. That's pretty typical. And then this came in the mail. It comes out sometime this week. I'm already partway through it, almost done with it, and I can tell you I love this. The San Diego Files series took a minute to grow on me because this is the first series that she's written. She has multiple series in different locations throughout the country, and what she does is she follows different characters in these cities. She's done Chicago, she's done Cincinnati, she's done New Orleans, she's done, I don't know if it counts as Atlanta specifically, she's done San Francisco, and now she's done San Diego. I'm probably missing, I think she's done Baltimore, like Maryland, DC, that area. She's written in many, many cities, but usually what she does is it's like one love story per book, you know, pretty typical mass market romance situation. The San Diego series is one that has taken place over multiple books. This is the first series that I'm aware of in which, like, it's not just a one and done romance happily ever after at the end. Both of the main characters are kind of dancing around each other, and they have been since book one. Kit McKittrick is the main female lead in this. She is a detective with San Diego PD for homicide. She's dancing around a romance with Dr. Sam Reeves, who in the first book was considered to be a suspect in a serial killer spree situation, and then things happened. He was obviously not the serial killer, but we're in book 3. They're not together yet. That's not typical for Karen Rose, and it took me a minute to warm up to this because when it comes to romance, I definitely am that person that prefers one book per couple, right? Like, I love that formula because I'm reading it to get the happy ever after. If I wanted to read a series of books, I feel like I personally would not be reading in the romance genre if I wanted, I don't know. It's a whole thing. That's probably for another video. All of that to say, I've read this and I've loved this so far. I'm not done with it yet, but I am really, really enjoying the growth that we're seeing from both Sam and Kit. I'm enjoying the overarching storyline that's been going on in the background since book 1. The most exciting news that I have to tell you guys is that Karen Rose just announced that this particular series of hers just got optioned for a TV show on Fox. Guys, it's so cinematic. Like, I think back in the day, I made a video. I'll try and put the link up in the cards, but I made a video talking about, like, if you like this TV show, you will like this book. And when I said Criminal Minds, if you like Criminal Minds, you should read something by Karen Rose. I stand by that to this day, and this would be so cinematically just chef's kiss perfect. And while I told you that it took me a second to get used to this formula of not one couple per book, this is probably the best series that they could have picked for a TV show. It's definitely giving Will Trent vibes by Karen Slaughter. Like, you follow the main character as they follow and solve a bunch of things, and all of the side characters with them, etc. Kit is definitely the main character here, right? Seeing her growth, what I think is really going to resonate with people when they watch this is Kit has a very troubled past. She's in the foster system. This is what makes me bring up Will Trent, by the way. She grew up in the foster system. However, unlike with Will Trent, she found an amazing foster family that continues to foster to this day. She stays involved with them. She calls them her mom and dad, and all of her foster siblings have been her siblings, like brothers and sisters, etc. So the found family aspect turned real family is so good. I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people as a TV show, and I really hope that it doesn't just get stuck in limbo like so many of these do, because if anything, romantic suspense-wise, deserves to be turned into a TV show, it's these. And I will get off of my soapbox now. But I was really excited to get this in the mail. Okay, so I raved for a lot longer than I intended to about those books, but now let's jump into the January wrap-up that I will try and go through as quickly as possible. So in January, I read a total of 9 books for 4,256 pages. So the very first book that I picked up in January was a novel love story by Ashley Polston. This has been on my radar for a minute. I've had several friends recommend it to me because Ashley Polston, it writes romance, but there's always some sort of like magical realism element to it. And so in a novel love story, I don't remember the main characters' names, let's be honest here. The main character is a woman who's obsessed with this romantic book series, and she is in a book club with a bunch of other people that are also obsessed with this particular series. It takes place in this fun little town in upstate New York. It's very cozy, very small town vibes, and apparently the author of this series passed away before she could finish all of them. And so the woman is running away from a failed engagement. Man, I talk about a lot of those recently, failed engagements in the books that I've been reading. But anyway, she's running away from a failed engagement in which they were about to get married and her fiance broke it off. And typically her book club meets in this cabin in upstate New York, I think every single year, but this year she's the only one who could make it, so she decides to go by herself. And in doing so, she accidentally crashes her car in the rain. She swerves to avoid hitting somebody, and lo and behold, she ends up in this town that is weirdly, eerily identical to the town in her favorite book series. She meets all of the characters from this book series except for one, the bookstore owner, who is somebody that has never appeared in any of the books before, and she's trying to figure out who he is in relation to the rest of the characters. Long story short, they fall in love. It was super cute. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. It's probably not my favorite romance read of the entire year, but I really enjoyed the premise. And I really liked the magical realism of it all. If you ever wanted to like dive into the world of your favorite books, this one's probably for you. It was a really good time. Next, I ended up receiving an arc of Tessa Bailey's new release, which is Dreamgirl Drama, which is the 3rd book in her newest, I don't even know what. So the first one was Fangirl Down, which was the golf romance. The second one was The Au Pair Affair, which was the hockey romance with the nanny for the hockey star's child. This follows a couple that you meet in book 2, Sig and Chloe, and it's good for fans of Life with Derek, if you guys remember that show from the early 2000s, where I don't remember if it was Disney or Nickelodeon, but like if you were rooting for the step-sibling relationship, but not in like a creepy way, this one's probably for you. So similar to Life with Derek, except we all know that they never actually got together, no matter how much we kind of wanted that to happen, low-key. So in Dreamgirl Drama, Sig and Chloe meet at a country club. Totally not his vibe, but his dad is forcing him to go and meet his new fiance, so he's driving up to go and do this at this fancy dinner, but his truck breaks down, so he ends up in this country club, not dressed for it, whatever, and through a slew of events, he meets Chloe, who kind of saves his ass, and they hit it off immediately. The chemistry is off the charts. They're making out in the freaking lawn. It's adorable, but they have to part their separate ways because they each have somewhere they need to be. Fast forward literally like a couple of hours later, and they find out that the big dinner that they are each going to have to attend is to announce that their parents are marrying each other, and therefore they are going to be step-siblings. Do I believe that the drama in this book was inflated way past where it needed to be? Absolutely. They are both grown, consenting adults. They met technically before knowing that their parents were together. Is it really that big of a deal? I personally don't think so. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. It's not like they're really related, right? It's not gross. It's not illegal. They don't, just the fact that their parents got married, even though he's like in his 30s and she's in his 20s, it's whatever. Anyway, it turns into this whole big deal where they can't be together, but they want to be together, and then they end up together, but then the secret's going to come out and it's going to ruin everybody's reputation, so on and so forth. Obviously, things work out in the end, and, it's fine. But because of all of the drama that felt a little bit too manufactured for me, I did only give this one 4 stars. Next was a reread for me, and that is Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. This is my tied for first place favorite book of hers. I've talked about Wait For It on my channel before. Single mom technically, but it's because she is the one who is taking care of her deceased brother's children, so they're technically her nephews, but she's the sole parent responsible for them, so they're essentially her children. And it's a single mom romance where the neighbor has a soft spot in his heart for single moms, and he just wants to help out, but he also ends up being the baseball coach for her oldest nephew. Things spiral from there. Mariana Zapata is the queen of slow burn romance, but Wait For It makes me cry every single time. and the single mom aspect of it is just so heart-wrenching. All of the grief that they're all still dealing with is so heart-wrenching, and I love that book so much. Then I read Consider Me by Becca Mack, which a friend of mine at work has been hounding me to read for months and months and months because she loves this hockey romance so much. I gave it 3.5 stars. I couldn't even really tell you the plot of this book anymore. The guy is a hockey star. His friend is engaged to a girl, and that girl's best friend is the female lead in this book, and they clash for various reasons. She doesn't want to get with him. She's like a high school gym teacher or something. He's chasing her because he's obsessed with her because she's very pretty, and that makes him fall in love instantaneously. She wants nothing to do with him because he's a playboy. You've read it all before. It was fine. He was so painfully immature that it honestly was hard to read at some points. I don't know if I'm just aging out of that, but that's why I stopped reading a lot of the college hockey romances recently, and I don't want that in my professional hockey romance as well. So I don't know. He was like an overgrown labradoodle puppy, and his personality matched it, and not in a cute way. I gave it 3.5 stars. Next up, I finally read Apprentice to the Villain, which is book 2 in the Assistant to the Villain series by Hannah Nicole Mirror. So the first book is I don't know, it's a light-ish fantasy type book, but it's humorous, and it's based on like making fun of corporate world. So like if the villain ran his enterprise as though it were a modern day corporation, so there's an HR department, there's like coffee and a chef, and he has an assistant that takes care of the everyday, I don't know, stuff that happens. It's weirdly charming. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and I love that about these books. It's fantasy romance as well, because obviously the villain is going to fall in love with the apprentice. We would not have that any other way. It was so cute. The first one was really, really good. The cliffhanger left me a little bit upset. The cliffhanger at the end of book 2 also leaves me a little bit upset, which is why I gave it a 4.25 stars, but the humor in this is just exactly what I always need whenever I pick it up. It doesn't take itself too seriously, the characters are really lovable, the storyline is always fun, and yeah, if you're interested in any of that, just try it, give it a shot. Next, I picked up the second book in Nora Roberts' new fantasy romance type trilogy called The Mirror. This is about a woman who inherits a mansion in, I think, Maine from a long-lost uncle, and the mansion, spoiler alert, is filled with ghosts of all of the people that have died there over the years, and she finds out that the brides, I think it's called the Lost Brides trilogy, now that I think about it, the brides of this family have all been cursed hundreds of years ago by this witch, and essentially if you get married in this mansion to a member of this family, or you are a member of this family, you die a horrible death, and she steals the ring, and she's an evil witch, etc. So they're very good. I always love Nora Roberts. I really enjoy most of her writing, and this I thought was going to creep me out or be a little bit cringe. Honestly, it has been really enjoyable. The first book, Jilted Bride, again, her fiance was sleeping with her cousin right before the wedding, so she calls off the whole thing and decides to, and then this falls into her lap, and so she decides to go to Maine and start her own business instead, and she kind of falls into the mess that is this family drama of ghosts and curses, and she's trying to save the ghosts that are stuck in this mansion at the behest of this evil witch that is also stuck in this mansion, and it is really, really good, and I have a great time with them. So I just finished book 2, which is The Mirror, and I think that book 3 comes out later on this year as well. I ended up giving book 2 4 stars. Next, I read Onyx Storm. We all know that that came out. I'm not going to go on and on and on about the last 3 books that I have to talk about, because the last 3 books that I read in January were Onyx Storm, Fourth Wing, and Iron Flame. I did rereads of the other 2 after I finished Onyx Storm. Honestly, I desperately needed that because I had zero concept of what happened in Iron Flame. I was very bored my first read through of that book. It was much better on reread. Let me preface this whole conversation with that. I fell in love with Fourth Wing back in 2023 when it came out. I was obsessed with it. I read it physically. No, I think I read the ebook, and then I read the audiobook, and then I went back, and as soon as I finished, I read it all over again because I was so into it. And then in the chaos afterwards, moving, starting new job, it took me probably like a month and a half to read Iron Flame, and I read it all audibly, and I was bored to tears. I did not like that book. I think my first read through I gave it like a 2 or a 3-star rating. So I was a little bit nervous going into Onyx Storm this year, and I had contemplated doing my reread beforehand, but I was very disappointed with Iron Flame, so I was worried that I was going to carry that into book 3. The good news is I didn't, and I loved Onyx Storm. I hate the cliffhangers that Rebecca Yarros puts into the ends of her books. I'm not going to talk about any spoilers. I gave Onyx Storm a 4.25 stars for a lot of the same reasons that I didn't really have a whole love of Iron Flame. But yeah, so that's where we're at with those. I'm going to read the next book. Onyx Storm redeemed it for me. Then I went back and I reread Fourth Wing. Loved it as much as I did the first time. Then I went back and I reread Iron Flame. It was much better on reread, but my god, that book needs to be like 300 pages shorter because there is so much filler in there that could be cut out. It's so ridiculous. Okay, so that was the month of January. This video is turning into an ungodly long one, but I am going to try and run through my February stats as fast as I can also. So in February, I read 8 books for a total of 3,353 pages. I'm really only going to be talking about 6 books because the first 2 that I read in the month of February are for a separate video. I'm doing a little bit of a readathon, whatever. It's a solo thing. We'll get to that in a second. So that is Green Rider by Kristen Britton and First Rider's Call, also by Kristen Britton. These are the first 2 books in her Green Rider series, and I will discuss that in another video. After that, I read Roll for Romance, and I don't remember the author's name. Lenora. I'll pop it up here, obviously. This is an arc that I was sent via the publisher. It is a D&D based romance that takes place in Texas that I ended up giving 3.75 stars. I enjoyed it. I really did. It's about a woman who loses her job in New York City as a, I don't know, marketing exec kind of situation. So she runs to her friend in Texas. He is a teacher down there. They are best friends. They have been for a very, very long time, and he kind of offers her refuge while she gets her life back together. And he's a huge D&D nerd, and he just wants her, while she's there for the summer, to join a campaign with a couple of his friends that are also first-time D&D players. So he puts together this whole campaign for them, and they all start to play together. One of the members is a bartender from a local startup brewery kind of a situation, and you watch their romance through the lens of real life, but you also see the storyline of their D&D campaign as though, if you've watched Critical Role's like Vox Machina on Amazon Prime, the storyline of their characters falling in love within the campaign, it's like watching Vox Machina, the TV show, versus listening to the campaign on YouTube. Does that make sense? So like the story is told in a completely separate way through the lens of the characters, but the story is also told in real life, like as they're playing it. And that was a little bit disconcerting for me. Like I kind of wanted more of one or the other, but it was almost very equally split. And that kind of threw me off whenever the switch happened. I wanted to keep going with either the character storyline in the fantasy world, or I wanted these guys to spend more time together outside of it. I had a little bit of a hard time connecting to the characters that way, just because I feel like we were transitioning like that, but it was still enjoyable. I still liked it, so I gave it 3.75 stars. The next book I'm so excited to talk to you guys about, and that is Ardently Yours by Evangeline Williams. I have talked about Evangeline Williams on my channel. I'm on her street team. I adore her books, but when I tell you that Ardently Yours is the best one that she's written yet, zero exaggeration, right? So she does really, really great, I don't want to call them rom-com. They're definitely romance with a hint of suspense and a lot of humor injected into it as well. So previously she's done a couple of Marriage of Convenience. The last one had both an autistic male lead for Rep as well as a disabled female lead for Rep, and Henry and Frankie, my god, I loved their story so much. But Ardently Yours is a prequel, right? So Henry's father, his name is Arden, and book 2, Bronwyn, is the female lead of book 2. So Henry and Bronwyn are brother and sister, and in Ardently Yours, you see their parents' love story. You've seen them in previous books as like side characters, and now they get their own love story. It takes place in the 90s. Charlotte is a single mom. In the beginning of the book, when you first meet her, she is pregnant and she is attending her fiance's funeral. And at the funeral, she meets a man who is her fiance's former boss, who was there to pay his respects. And he sees this single soon-to-be mom from this very poor area of central Pennsylvania, and he immediately feels for her. At first, he was there to just pay his respects for his former employee, and now he feels this need to take care of this woman who is struggling. And so, under the guise of the fiance had a life insurance policy, he sneaks some money her way that in an attempt to try and make her life a little bit easier. You follow their romance through the years as they write to each other. This is the 90s, right? So she emails him to say thank you for all of the help. He emails back. They're trading parenting tips. They are ranting to each other about bad days. They are trading pictures of their kids because he has two children from a former marriage, and he's watching Bronwyn grow up. It's You've Got Mail. It's two single parents. It's got the best friend, I'd bury a body for you trope. It's got loyalty. It's got so many good feelings and vibes and heartfelt moments, and I need to read this book all over again. It got 5 stars from me. When I tell you that this is Evangeline Williams' best book yet, I need you to believe me. The emails that they send to each other, I live for that shit, right? Like, I absolutely soak that shit up, and it was so good. So, Ardently Yours, Evangeline Williams. It's technically the prequel, but there's no spoilers for anything else that happens further on in the books if you want to start with this one. I love it so much. My favorite of everything she's written yet. Next is The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. I already talked to you guys' ears off about that one, and I loved it a lot. It got 5 stars from me, so go pick that one up already. And then I read Ignite by, I think Melanie Harlow is the name. This is a book that kept getting advertised to me on Instagram, and you guys know I'm a sucker for these social media wrecks. So single dad firefighter moves into a new townhouse. I think I came into the middle of a series here. I don't think I had the context for all of the other people falling in love in this series, but like I just kind of read it. So single dad of 2 girls moves into a new townhouse, and the neighbor is super cute but very young, so there's a bit of an age gap there, but they kind of keep getting into each other's orbit and they can't help it, and it's adorable, and she's great with his kids, and we all know I'm a sucker for any time anybody is a single parent in one of these books. So I really liked it. Actually, I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. Some of the dialogue was a little bit cringy. Some of the choices that they made kind of stupid, but what can we ask for here, really? But yeah, I liked it. It was a good time. I'm probably going to read more in that series. The last 2 books are fantasies, well, fantasy romance. So I read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This has been blowing up everywhere. The cover is beautiful, but it took me so long to get into because the writing was a little bit too flowery for me. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars, and I can't even give you like a valid synopsis of what this book is about. So like Rave is an assassin for hire, I guess, in this fantasy world, and you meet her when she's in the middle of like a job where she's about to assassinate this guy. But her past is this really big mystery, and you don't seem to be able to find out exactly what happened with all of that. You follow her as she learns what is happening, where she has been, where she is from, and she keeps coming into the orbit of a certain other mysterious man who has a dragon, we find out later, and they have a shared past that she does not recall. And I just don't know how to tell you anymore without spoiling some very large spoilers in this book. There is clearly going to be more to this series because, again, cliffhanger. We can't write a fantasy romance without leaving off on a cliffhanger, God forbid. It was okay. Once I got used to the writing, it took me a very long time, and I didn't really like the audiobook narrator, but once I got used to it, I kind of flew through the rest. So 3.75 stars. The dragons were present as I had hoped that they would be. Maybe they will be more in future books, so we'll see. And then the last book that I read is The North Wind by Alexandria Warwick. I've talked to you guys about this series a couple of times because Saga Press has sent me the North Wind and the West Wind, and I will be picking up the West Wind shortly here. So I finally read The North Wind by Alexandria Warwick, and while it took me some time, I ended up really liking it, honestly. I gave it 4 stars, and it is about a girl who, it's very Beauty and the Beast, this first book. So the North Wind is this king, I don't know, deity. Every so often he takes a bride with him back to his castle, and in this case he was going to choose a certain person from this village, and Ren, I want to say her name is Ren, it was to be her sister, and in a very Hunger Games moment she volunteers as tribute and sneaks off with him, pretends to be her sister, and takes the place as his bride, thinking that she's saving her sister's life, because that's what she spent this entire time doing, is trying to save her sister's life. So she does this, they leave, she's an alcoholic, he's barely a functioning person, he has 0 emotions, and they learn to coexist while fighting off the bad things in the realm that are threatening the safety of the realm. You know how it goes. So obviously they fall in love throughout all of this. And while it took me a very long time to get into it because I didn't really like Ren as a character, by the end I actually really enjoyed them, and I wish that this was a book in which we got more. But this is a fantasy romance series in which you follow one couple per book. So the one time that I actually wanted it to go the other way, it does not. Go figure. But yeah, I read The North Wind. I liked it a lot. Gave it 4 stars, and I'm moving on to The West Wind shortly, which follows Zephyrus, who is the West Wind, another deity, the North Wind's brother, who you did meet him in book 1. I don't really know how we're going to redeem him. He wasn't really great in book 1, but I guess that's all part of the character arc. So that is finally everything that I read in the months of January and February. I have been talking for an ungodly long amount of time. I am so sorry for this. I meant to do a monthly wrap-up at the end of January, and time got away from me. First of all, that month lasted forever. And then second of all, it felt like February was gonna last forever, but then it just ended very quickly. So all that being said, I'm sorry. We're gonna end this right here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. Down in the description box, you are going to see links to my Goodreads, my Instagram, and my X, and my Storygraph, because I'm going to add that, because I'm actually most active on Storygraph now. Also, if you want to check out Unplugged Book Box, I did finally get my rep code. The rep code is CAT5. That'll be down in the description box as well. But that's it for this one today, guys, so I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!